Hey folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're looking at The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, or insert one of its other 15 titles. Released in 1974 and directed by Jorge Grau, Manchester Morgue for my money is this sort of weird halfway house between what Hammer had been doing with its more contemporary gothic efforts such as Dracula AD 1972 and the new wave of horror that had been sort of born from Night of the Living Dead. If you will, a sort of mixture of classic British horror iconography and gut-munching splatter. The film follows George, played by Ray Lovelock, and I have to say Ray Lovelock is a fantastic name, but I'm sorry, that's not important right now. He's travelling out of the city to the Peak District to go and work on a new house. I say the city because George is incredibly cockney, so you would presume that he is leaving London, but obviously Manchester Morgue is in the title, and all of the footage is of Manchester, but no one actually ever says that that's where he is, so I'm just sort of being vague. Anyway, as he's travelling, he pulls up on his motorbike to get fuel, and his bike is run over by Edna, and she's played by Christina Galbo, and for sort of plot reasons, they end up travelling together as she's got to go and find a sister and he insists on driving, and it's not a normal thing that anyone would do. Then, more plot reasons, they pull over and George has to go and talk to a farmer, and he finds that the Department of Agriculture are there with this new machine that turns insects against one another using some sort of radiation, which again is quite a strange way of dealing with things. And I mean, can you guess what is going to happen next? I'll give you 5 seconds. Zombies. Because of course some machine out in the countryside isn't going to cause anything other than zombies. Then, obviously, as the bodies start piling up, the police come in, and for some reason they're like, oh, you're from out of town, you killed these people because you're hippies. And then it's up to George and Edna to go, no, we didn't kill those people. It was the zombies.
Satan's all the rage these days.
I have to say, Ray Lovelock's George is a pretty good hero for a horror film. I mean, he's pretty much just a knob, back-chatting people all the time. He cannot drive, he does not understand speed limits whatsoever. But he sort of works, you can sort of believe that he would be capable enough in these situations. I mean, a lot of the work is undone in that his dubbing is awful. I mean, he is so cockney, he says ridiculous things. I mean, you know, hearing him say, don't get your knickers in a twist, love, in a serious voice is just ridiculous. But I mean, that goes for pretty much everyone in this film. I mean, no one's accent is from the Peak District, I don't think. No one sounds like they're even remotely from the same part of the country. I mean, there is one of the police officers that I have no idea where he was supposed to be from. It was awful. But, I mean, it's charming enough. And it gets a good couple of laughs early on.
Could a film fail to catch an image for any reason?
Christina Galbo's Edna gives simultaneously a better performance in a much less interesting character. Unfortunately, Edna is pretty much just a damsel in distress who screams and runs away from zombies, or is menaced by zombies so that someone has to come and deal with the zombies. I've said zombies too many times, it stopped sounding like a word. But, I mean, Galbo really goes for it. I think, you know, you can see a real commitment to getting into the character, and I think a lot of this probably comes down to the fact that literally days before they went into shooting, her husband passed away, and I just think, I mean, hats off to her for even wanting to do the film, but I mean, she is fantastic in it because you can really, she looks genuinely scared or panicked, and I think you can tell that perhaps making the film was sort of a great way of exercising her grief and all of the emotion in it, because, you know, some of the points where she has to sort of have a freak out, she really goes for it and you really believe it, and I'm really glad that she still did the film, because she's just fantastic in it.
Listen, boy. You keep getting on my nerves, and I'm going to give you another kind of house to look after. One with lots of bars in the windows.
I mean, no character, though, in Manchester Morgue is as memorable as Arthur Kennedy's police inspector. I mean, he gives the biggest performance in the film. I mean, he's not in it that much, but he is the person you will remember from this when you finished it. Because he has all the best lines. He is just chewing the scenery, overacting all over the place, and it is amazing. I mean, he probably has one of my favourite quotes in any horror film.
I can just imagine the sergeant's face when he finds out.
I think this sort of evil authority figure plays into a lot of the more interesting stuff in Manchester Morgue. I mean, you have this eco-horror stuff going on with the Department of Agriculture sort of causing the zombies, and that they are refusing to believe that what they have done is causing this, which, I mean, can come off as a bit silly. I mean, you know, the machine itself that they are using is ridiculously hokey, and there's a bit where they've got like this wand thing that is just like a colander on the end of a stick. But, you know, if you think, you know, what is going on with the planet now and how we are destroying it and how lots of countries are just like, I couldn't care less, it feels pretty pertinent still. It's weird that a film that is now, you know, that came out in 1974 has that theme nailed down. But I mean, that is nothing compared to the anti-establishment stuff in this film. I mean, it is so cheesy, so on the nose, but so great for it. I mean, George is so sort of designed to be cool and like a free spirit, and he's into art and he collects all these weird things. Yeah, he's so cool. And then you've got like the detestable police inspector who is just mean and horrible from the second that he turns up, and you can imagine this playing fantastically well to a sort of young audience at the time that were going to see these sorts of films. And I mean, it still plays great today. I mean, if you think that we have a authority figure, a person in power, who is refusing to believe any of the pretty obvious evidence placed in front of him and just continues bullheaded in his own way of thinking and just is not going to change it, and is making the crisis far, far worse in doing so, while still wanting to become a celebrity and a hero out of doing it. I mean, is this ringing any bells with anyone? The film still looks pretty great. I mean, the new Synapse version has cleaned up the film incredibly well, and a lot of the greenery in the film pops. I mean, the cinematography itself is nothing particularly to write home about. There are a couple of pretty, you know, there's a really clever shot to do with a mirror that I'm not going to spoil, but that's very good. But a lot of the stuff here, I mean, it does really remind you of Night of the Living Dead if they'd put it in colour and it was in a wider aspect ratio. That's pretty much how the film looks. There is nothing particularly out there, but it's all sort of bolstered by the fact that it's shot in these lovely Peak District locations. I mean, some of the stuff by like the stream, and there is a fantastic church which I know they had trouble filming at because tourists turned up while they were filming and they had to finish within one day. But I mean, it all looks great, and you can actually do tours of the little town that they filmed in, which I think is really sweet. You know, you can go into the shop in which they go to get their photos developed.
Well, a ghost, maybe.
The gore here is also top-notch in my opinion. I mean, there isn't absolute buckets of the stuff, but what you do get is very good. You've got a lot of sort of people being torn apart, got people doing the sort of munching on guts that you got in Night of the Living Dead, but it is, you know, because it's in colour, it has that bit more of an impact, and the blood it's really quite dark, and I think it probably doesn't look realistic, but it has that sort of, you believe it more so than some of the gore that even you get in like later zombie films. A little content warning: there is a bit in which a woman gets her boob pulled off by a zombie. The zombies are very gropey in this film. They seem to like to tear at people's clothes a lot. But I mean, it's quite quick. It's quite a cutaway. But if that sort of thing is a problem for you, just know that that is in there. I mean, it's what got the film in trouble in the UK, almost certainly. The zombies in the film, there aren't many zombies, but they have been clearly put together with a little bit more sort of thought. You've got, each zombie is quite distinct, and I think Guthrie, which is a fantastic name for a zombie, who is the main zombie in the film, is a really, really cool design, and I like that the zombies here are a little bit more proactive. They do things that don't turn up in other zombie films, but they sort of add to the gothic nature of it, this sort of ritualistic evil aspect, despite the fact that they're made by science, which is a bit of a contradiction. But I'm not going to spoil too much of that, because I think it's just a bit of a weird way of doing zombies, and I like it. The film soundtrack is definitely on the weirder side of film, well, horror film soundtracks at this point, but especially zombie soundtracks. I mean, the film opens with a sort of more sort of tuneful 70s horror movie soundtrack, but quickly devolves into just weird electronic atonal bleep bloops mixed with some moaning. Often it's like recycled versions of the zombies, or director Jorge Grau actually did a bunch of the zombie moans for the film. And I don't know, it's just really weird. It's got this sort of radiophonic workshop doing their weirdest stuff vibe, and I think it really does help to add a much creepier layer to the film. I mean, it's not something you're going to come away from the film humming in the way that you might from something like Dawn of the Dead a bit later on. But no, it's just, it's more ambient, and it's just unsettling. I have to say, I think overall the film still stands up pretty well. I mean, the first time I saw this, I mean, it was quite a few years ago now, I hated it. I thought it was really, really boring. But on subsequent watches, I think it has got a lot of really interesting stuff in it. I think it is a much slower zombie film than a lot of other zombie films, especially of this era. I mean, it's still pretty early in the gut-munching variety of zombies. But I think, you know, something like Dawn of the Dead and a lot of the stuff that comes after it is quite action-packed. This is very much a spooky, you know, trying to unnerve horror film as much as it is a sort of gory romp. And I think that makes it quite special. I think it is a shame that the dubbing is bad and the accents are bad, because that sort of undermines that creepy vibe to it, and it undermines some of the performances. But it's all part of what makes Manchester Morgue really interesting. I mean, I'm sorry that I've kept referring to it as Manchester Morgue, because the Manchester Morgue is mentioned. It is not even in the film. We don't even know that there are zombies there. That's quite weird. I mean, the film is full of weird moments. I mean, although it's set in Britain, you can tell that, you know, it's a European cast, it's a European director, it's very much a Euro horror sensibility, because there are just odd moments that pop up out of nowhere. You know, they go to a pub and there is an owl that lives. I mean, it's pointless. It's a pointless owl, but it's there. And I mean, I'm sure anyone that's seen the film knows about the streaker at the start, and it serves no purpose apart from, you know, putting some titty in the film. But it's just bizarre, and the film is full of just little weird moments that you go, why is that there? And you go, because it's charming and it's part of the film. And I do think if you are a zombie film fan, if you haven't seen this, you know, get on it. It's not the best zombie film ever, but it's a really interesting zombie film with some good deaths and some corking dialogue. So no, what are you waiting for? Get it. Get this new version. It's got oodles of special features that I'm very excited to get into. Oh, and this one comes with the soundtrack on CD as well. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Have you seen Living Dead at Manchester Morgue? Do you like it? Were you like me and hated it the first time? Which of its many, many titles do you think is best? I'm going to put money on Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. I think that's fantastic. Let me know down in the comments. Like and subscribe so that you don't miss any more videos, and I'll see you next time.